Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Simulated Workplace Leadership Series Teacher Resources modules. I'm here today to talk to you about Module 2, which is going to focus on leadership specifically within the CTE environment. My name is Amber Ravenscroft. I'm a manager of innovation for the EdVenture Group and the project director for the Simulated Workplace Leadership Series. So let's dive into what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be connecting leadership and CTE. And we're going to do that by identifying effective leadership strategies for a career in tech ed, reflecting on your current CTE environment, both from a cultural and a leadership capacity, and then creating a strategy for infusion of leadership skills into your CTE environment. So let's get started. The first section, we're going to cover best practices and effective leadership strategies for career in tech ed. As part of our most recent Simulated Workplace Leadership Program, we have published a white paper that focuses on highlights and best practices for youth development and youth leadership and career in tech ed. We would highly encourage you to check out that full white paper, but we're going to look at some of the highlights in today's module. First, I want to highlight a quote from ACTE that talks about the importance of career and technical education in developing leaders of the future. In this publication from 2012, so a whole 10 years ago, ACTE recognized that career and technical education is a key component to creating future leaders that will play an integral role in the future of the nation's workforce. We know that as CTE teachers, you know that. What we're going to do today is explore just some effective best practices you are probably already doing and look specifically at leadership alignment within the West Virginia simulated workplace environment. Why are we talking about this? A recent study found that 39% of human resources professionals reported job applicants in their industry have leadership skills gaps. So when we look at the emerging workforce, they're highly technically advanced. They understand how to use technology. They have all of those skills that come from an academic setting, an actual curriculum, but they're lacking leadership skills that make them fit into the workplace and succeed in the workplace. And so we're talking about how can we layer leadership development and the growth of our young leaders into these highly technical, highly academic settings like CTE. And a strategy that we highlight throughout the white paper is work-based learning, which if you are in a simulated workplace environment, you are already very familiar with this. But work-based learning is an educational strategy that enables our students to develop technical and employability skills through authentic work experiences. So these are things like communication and collaboration. Our students are working internally on their communication and collaboration, but also experiencing that externally with clients. They're doing problem solving and working on projects that create meaningful solutions for others. And they're acting with a certain level of professionalism. So they are expected to be able to interact with people outside of the school building in a professional and courteous way. So what do the white paper and the literature review conducted for the white paper tell us? First, it explores evidence-based practices in CTE, youth development, and leadership development within an urban, suburban, and rural setting, including a highlight on our simulated workplace leadership series. So with each of those environments, you will find a different evidence-based practice that you can tap into and use in your classroom. We're not going to go over them in depth today because, as I mentioned, if you have been in West Virginia's simulated workplace environment for a few years now, you are definitely familiar with evidence-based practices. This is just a reiteration and a confirmation that those practices are effective. Next, we look at career in tech ed and student-run businesses and how leadership development happens through work-based learning. And so a lot of our CTE centers already run student-run businesses. And so there is a section in the white paper that highlights how leadership development happens through those student-run businesses, which are the cornerstone of all simulated workplace environments. And then finally, we talk about CTE and leadership development in student-led organizations. So these external organizations that also support CTE like SWLS and Future Farmers of America. We look at what that experiential collaboration in those external student-led organizations, how that helps support leadership development. And so we highly encourage you to give that white paper a read and maybe share that with different stakeholders of your simulated workplace or your CTE classroom, because We know that as educators, but it's important to share these outcomes with others as well, as we're looking to promote CTE awareness and engagement. So the white paper concludes with a few recommendations for CTE leadership, and this includes leadership at the CTE, director level, but also what this can look like in the classroom. So the recommendations for inclusion of leadership development and overall personal development for students are to, one, of course, integrate student-led teams and businesses into your CTE environment, which is a normal, natural shift for us in the simulated workplace. We are very used to having students lead learning, and so this should be an easy ask for you all. A second key recommendation is to conduct business-related competitions. A lot of our student organizations will already have those, but there is the opportunity to integrate different business-related competitions within the classroom, such as a classroom-based pitch contest, a classroom-based trade show, etc. So the idea of competition and gamified learning can really help build youth leadership and development. Third, real-world practice and application. So again, this is not anything new for our simulated workplace instructors, but providing students the opportunity to engage with real clients, to go and work on problems and project-based learning opportunities that are directly related to community problems. All of that helps build their leadership skills and their ability to be employable in the future. And then finally, work-based learning. So apprenticeships, internships, these are all big things for career and technical education, and we should continue to uplift those and provide opportunities for students to experience that professionalism in an actual work-based learning environment separate from the classroom. So there is a great resource for Classroom to Career Navigator available in the state for you to check out some of those resources for work-based learning for your students. So now we're going to reflect on the career and technical education environment and look at current culture and leadership development within our protocols. So we have a resource that we are providing through this program. But before we dive into what that resource looks like, we want to have just a quick pause and reflect question here of how do you currently integrate leadership into your CTE environment? So if you're watching this and you're viewing it as a recording, go ahead and hit pause and just take a moment to reflect and maybe write down your own thoughts about this question. How do you currently integrate leadership into your CTE environment? Great. So once you've had a chance to just think about that on the front end, we're going to look a little bit about simulated workplace protocols, the 12 protocols that are required across West Virginia's career and tech ed programs that help us provide a tangible infrastructure for leadership development in CTE. So what we've done through the Simulated Workplace Leadership Series has created a set of 12 videos, they're very brief, for students to gain an understanding of the protocol and then understand a leadership fundamental foundational skill around leadership that aligns with that protocol. So before we dive into what those leadership skills are and how they map to the protocols, let's just take a quick look at the 12 protocols that currently exist. Number one, we have student-led companies, which again is a best practice from the white paper through a rigorous literature review across the nation. Two, we have an application interview structure. So all of the simulated workplace CTE environments across the state should be requiring students to apply and interview for different positions. All of the CTE environments also should be having a formal attendance system in place. Drug-free work zones are a big priority for us. All simulated workplaces should be a drug-free work zone and also include drug testing and other protocols for students to validate that they are drug-free. All students in the simulated workplace environment should be creating a 6S environment. Relatedly, they also should be focusing on safe work areas and ensuring that they're up to industry standards. Simulated workplaces and CTE environments in West Virginia should be operating as workplace teams. They should be integrating project-based learning, which again is this idea of problem solving through projects rather than lecture-based learning. Each simulated workplace needs to have a company name and a handbook that dictates how the company operates, both internally and externally. They should be holding regular company meetings that are, back to number one, student-led. Working with industry representatives, they also are required to host on-site business reviews to ensure that they are meeting industry standards. And then last but not least, there are accountability measures in place so that students are meeting the requirements around volunteerism and hours outside of the classroom, but also internal accountability systems to keep them aligned with the other 11 protocols. So as I mentioned, there is a resource that we have developed through the Simulated Workplace Leadership series that is available for you if you are looking to quickly integrate leadership into your CTE environment. The Simulated Workplace Protocol series is a series of 12 videos that are available on YouTube or for download. If you have any questions, you can contact us directly. Our contact information is the end. But what we've done is we've looked at the protocol, we looked at how it is described by the Department of Education and its requirements for protocol implementation, and we have mapped a foundational leadership skill to that protocol with a how-to, knowledge building for students, and an actionable activity at the back of the video for them to apply it in the classroom. And so this is a great opportunity to sprinkle it through your classroom over the academic year to help build knowledge from your student leaders on the front end, and just to ensure that leadership is driving protocol adherence. So we're going to go over quickly the protocol and what leadership fundamental skill we add to that. So in the first protocol, we focus on defining leadership and leadership styles. You all will be familiar with this. It's a little bit of the content from our first module of the teacher series, where we encourage student leaders to identify their own personal leadership styles and how they can best serve the students in their class. Protocol 2, we focus on upskilling and mentorship. So if they have to interview and apply for different jobs, we want to talk about how can we upskill the students that are in our classroom and provide that mentorship to really make them strong individuals. For number 3, the attendance systems, we talk about what does leadership look like within systems and structures. And so this is how to set up those systems and ensure that everyone is on board and co-creating those systems with you. Protocol 4, we talk about demonstrative leadership or leading by example. Protocol 5, we talk about attention to detail and how this is vital in terms of safety. And then this is related to Protocol 6, creating a safety culture. So you can see throughout the 6S environment and the safety requirements of simulated workplaces, particularly those that deal with heavy equipment. We have this focus on attention to detail and creating a safety culture of just ensuring safety is a #1 priority for our student leaders. In Protocol 7, we talk about building relational leadership. So this is that idea of we have workplace teams and how can we create strong relationships within them. Protocol 8 is focused on that project-based learning. So we talk a little bit about empathy and problem finding so that we are identifying problems that are meaningful to our community to solve within the project-based learning environment. Protocol 9, the company handbook. This is really interesting because we took a little bit of a spin on this. It's easy to build a handbook that has rules of behavior and how we should operate, but that needs to be guided by an overall values, vision, and mission statement for an organization. And so this section really focuses on how can students set the values, vision, and mission for their simulated workplace. Protocol 10, we talk about communication and delegation. So how do we effectively communicate and delegate within our workplace, but also externally? Protocol 11 is on-site business review. Since students are working with industry stakeholders outside of the environment, we talk about relationship building. How can they connect with different stakeholders and how can they professionally communicate with them? This is vital. And then finally, Protocol 12 is accountability. And so we talk about the importance of servanthood, of meeting those hours that are required for our students, but also how to build accountability structures for ourselves through goal setting. And so each of those videos, they last no longer than 5 minutes. They each talk about these values, these foundational leadership skills. I'm going to encourage you to use them, especially as you are bringing student leaders into your simulated workplaces and they're being hired for different leadership positions. This is a great opportunity for you to integrate leadership skill development at the very front end of the academic year. So let's conclude this module with just a brief look at some activities that you can do around your own leadership strategy to create an action plan that will infuse leadership across all components of your CTE environment's culture. We're going to look at some of the personal ways you can do this as well as at the classroom level. So first, we're going to talk about conducting a personal audit. I know in the first module, you kind of reflect on your own leadership style. This one, we're going to ask you to expand on that a little bit and consider your personal teaching strategies and the best practices from section 1. So first, we'd like you to kind of identify your preferred teaching style. One of the standards of simulated workplace is this idea of project-based learning, but if you are more comfortable in a lecture type setting, how can you take a moment to reflect on what your personal preferred style is and how can you adapt that to meet the needs and the leadership development needs of the simulated workplace environment specifically. Next, you'll take your default leadership style that you identified in Module 1 and consider how that also impacts the culture of your classroom. For example, if you are an authoritarian leadership by default, that means you kind of dictate what goes on and what's involved and how everyone operates, where you might need to consider switching to a transformational leader that engages and motivates everyone towards a common goal. This can be a little bit of a work in progress for personal development depending on your leadership style. And so it's very important that we reflect on that and we identify where the gaps are, particularly in how simulated workplace is supposed to operate in order to create an effective strategy for leadership development for our students. And then finally, reflecting on the best practices in CTE leadership identified from the white paper in the previous sections, taking a look at if we're already doing those in the classroom, how can we strengthen them? And if we are not already doing that in the classroom, how might we be able to integrate those into the classroom? Things like student-run businesses, different competitions within the classroom, real-world experiences, and work-based learning. So this is all taken together, your preferred teaching style, your default leadership style, and the best practices. How can we create an opportunity for our students that is starting by us? So we are first reflecting on our own understanding and then creating and adapting our leadership skills to meet the needs of our students where they are. So once we have conducted a personal audit, we will then go ahead and conduct a classroom culture audit where you'll take a look at areas of strength. So if we look at those 12 protocols, are there some that stand out that are stronger than others? Identify areas where your classroom already exemplifies a strong student-led leadership culture. So maybe your students are already leading your company meetings, but they didn't have necessarily input into the company handbook. We want to look at the areas of strength and then also compare those with areas of improvement. So if there are areas where you are doing the heavy lifting and your students could increase their own ownership, we need you to take a step back and consider what those areas might be so that you can provide the opportunity to build leadership skills in those areas for students. So if you have been using a replicated company handbook to meet that protocol from the last couple of academic years, this would be a great opportunity to take a step back and say, can we create a team within our simulated workplace to review that company handbook and provide feedback and changes? It's easy just to kind of check off our boxes, but we want to encourage student involvement across all 12 protocols. And so this is where that personal audit really comes into play. And then finally, we want to create an action plan. So using the protocol series, which has tangible knowledge building and activities for our students to do, can we create an action plan to integrate leadership integration across the curriculum, across your academic year more regularly? And so for the action plan, we would encourage you to take some time, develop that with your students. And then if you have questions or you want some feedback on how to implement that, please get in touch with us. We will be available for, one-on-one technical assistance, different resources to help support your simulated workplace leadership environment. And so would encourage you to reach out to me directly at my email. Again, I'm Amber Ravenscroft, the Manager of Innovation. And you've heard from Cameron Keefe on the last the other two modules of this series around different ways that we can identify our own leadership style and build our leadership capacity, and then increase our understanding of design thinking for the leadership series, Leadership Legacy Project. So we would love for you to connect with us, keep us updated on what you're doing, and share with us what's going on in your classroom. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in Module 3.